Welcome to MES e-learning channel. In today's session, we will be seeing different phases that are involved in development of BI intelligence system. So, the title of today's video is Phases in Development of Business Intelligence System. So, this phase or this development of BI system involve 4 different phases. So, starting with the first phase is known as analysis phase. Now, in this analysis phase, we have one component which is known as identification of business need. So, this is the first component of this phase, that is analysis phase, which is identification of business needs. Moving to the second phase is our design phase. Under design phase, we have two primary components involved over here. The first one is infrastructure recognition, and the second one is project macro planning. So, these are the two main components involved under designing phase. These two phases are connected with one another. Moving to the third phase is our planning phase. Now, in planning phase, we have different modules which are connected with one another. Starting with the first part of this planning phase, which is detailed project requirement. Then we also have identification of various data warehouse or data marts. Data warehouse and data mart. We have one more component over here, that is definition of mathematical models that are needed, and lastly we have development of prototype. Now, these sub components are connected with one another. So, here we can see the connection as well. So, this is the third phase of our development of BI system. Moving towards the last phase of the development phases. So, we have implementation and control. So, these are the 4 different phases which are involved over here in development of BI system. Now, in our fourth phase, that is implementation and control, again we have some sub components available over here, starting with the first component, which is development of data warehouse and data mart. Then we have development of metadata. Then we have another component, that is development of ETL tool. We have development of application, and lastly we have releasing and testing. So, these are the 4 different phases that are involved. Now, let us understand, starting with the first phase, which is analysis phase. So, as we can see in our analysis phase, the first component is identification of business need. So, here we need to understand what are the requirements of the business, what sort of problems they are facing, and with the help of BI system will we be able to solve those problems or not. So, that is what identification of business need. So, what are the requirement of business that we need to understand while we are developing this BI system. Moving towards the next, that is design. Once the problem is been understood, then we need to move to the second phase, which is design phase. Now, over here we need to understand what are the infrastructure requirement to develop a software which will be able to fulfill the need of the business. Okay, whatever is the need of the business, how we can solve that, what are the infrastructures that are required to fulfill that need of the business. So, that recognition is been done under designing phase. Apart from that, we also need to do project macro planning. Project macro planning simply means that we need to understand approximately how much time will be required to complete that project, what will be the cost that will be involved into completion of that project, and all those things. So these the two types of identification has been done under designing phase. Once these things has been done, then we move to the third phase, that is planning phase. Now over here in planning phase, we will now plan about detailed requirement that are done in the project, such as we need to identify what sort of mathematical models we will be using in our software. We will also identify what sort of database or data marts are required, which we will be incorporating in our system. Once these things is been identified, then what we can do, we can develop a prototype. We can develop a prototype of our BI system. So these three things is been done under planning phase. First of all, we need to identify the mathematical models that are needed, which will be helpful to solve the problems that are faced by the company. We also need to understand or identify the data warehouse or data marts that we will be requiring and incorporating in our BI solution. And once these things is been identified, then we can develop a prototype. So these are the tasks that is been done under third phase. Moving towards the fourth phase, that is implementation and control. So this is the final phase of the development process. So here what we do, we just basically whatever identification of database and data marts has been done in the earlier stage, that development of those database or data mart has been done over here. So in the earlier stage, that is planning phase, we just identify what are the database we require. Now over here in the implementation phase, we actually develop those database which has been identified. Apart from that, we also develop some ETL tools. ETL, again, it stands for extraction, transformation and loading. So here we also develop some ETL tool, that is extraction, transformation, loading. We also develop some metadata, which is nothing but data about data. Whatever database we have related to that, what we also develop some metadata. Once these thing is been done, then we develop the final application. And once the application is been developed, then we release that application or the software, and finally we do the testing of that application. If any problem is been faced while testing the application, then we may go back to the different phases and we can rectify it. So these are the basic steps that are involved in development of BI system. So in this session we had covered that there are 4 different phases that are involved. Analysis, where in short we just identify the requirement of the business. Design, we identify the infrastructure that are required, and also we do the macro planning about the project. In planning phase, we find out or figure out the detailed requirement of the project, which include mathematical model, mathematical model, identification of data warehouse, and so on and so forth. And moving towards the last one, that is implementation and control. Here we identify or we develop ETL tool, metadata. We finally develop the application and release the application and further we just test it. So these are the things that we do in development of phases involved in development of BI system. So in this session we will stop over here. See you in the next class. Thank you.